this space is cool and I'm intrigued by it in some way. What can I do with it? Or how can I dance with it rather than like apply something on it that may or may not work.
Hey y'all, welcome back to the Takeoff. On this episode, we got Chloe Reynolds. You might be able to hear it in my voice. I'm getting over a cold, and I'd actually tried to record this episode with Chloe before Christmas time when she was still in Sweden. She had a cold that time. If you wonder why my nose and mouth look like I just finished a Red Bull Art of Motion after party, yeah, it is not from illicit drug use. It is actually just that I've been sneezing like crazy for the last 4 days. So I apologize if my voice is a little bit annoying to listen to in this episode. Hopefully, Chloe takes the stage and, does most of the talking. This was a really fun one because I'd never gotten a chance to meet or talk to Chloe before. And this is the first podcast I've done with somebody who I'd honestly never had a conversation with. So there were a lot of things like how she got into parkour that I genuinely was curious to know and had no context for. From my experience, Chloe's kind of popped onto the scene in this past year and been very innovative in the way that she melds dance. And she obviously has a formal dance background with parkour, builds on stuff that has been happening in the community, but I think is also adding in a really interesting way. And I wanted to kind of dig into that in this episode, how she has taken her formal dance background, what she has learned from choreography and all those years studying that in the context of dance, and how she applies it to parkour, and how she wants to kind of share that with other people, and how she sees other people who maybe don't have her exact same style. For instance, somebody like me who's mostly just jumping on rails and doing vaults and occasionally flips, but how somebody like me could potentially take the concepts that she's working with and apply them to my own training. And I definitely got a lot out of this episode. As always, I hope you do too. Let's get into it. Chloe Reynolds, welcome to the Takeoff.
Thank
You are
you.
very welcome to be
Happy
here.
to be here.
This is actually, I'll say this now in case I forget to say it in the intro. This is our
Yeah.
second attempt because you were dealing with a cold on the first one and some funky internet, and now I'm dealing with a cold. So I'm glad that it's just that season.
Yeah. It's a li our attempts are just a little bit cursed so far. Do you
A
think
little
you'll
bit, but
input any clips of our last recording?
there were so it was a really great conversation. It's funny because it was so I was more frustrated than I've like ever been having a digital conversation with somebody because it was so
I do
fascinating,
remember
and
that.
you'd be like dropping an amazing answer to something, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so curious where this is going, and then the internet would cut out and I'd just be like raging at my computer.
Yeah, it also always cut out, like, right as I was about to, like, say my answer, too. I remember you'd
Yeah,
ask the question, I'd, like, think about it for a little second, I'd be like, "Okay, blah, blah, blah," and then it would cut out. So
so
but I
we'll
think my
have to
internet's
include some
solid
of
now.
those. Yeah, we
Should
can
be
make
fine.
like a teaser that just has all of those moments and drop that. No,
Oh,
I'll
yeah, no,
try and
that'd be
clip some
great.
of the
Or
good
all of
stuff.
the clips of just you being frustrated in between when we were talking, just edit those together.
Fully. Yeah, so you were in Sweden the last time we were talking. Would you mind running us through what you've been up to the month of December? It seems like you've been all over the place.
Oh my god, the month of December was really funny. Well, for context, I am living in Los Angeles now. Like I signed a lease and I wasn't in my apartment once throughout the entire month of December, and I paid for the whole thing. So I had a jam-packed December. I started in Vermont, and then I went to Miami and I did a little sort of like a commercial there, which was really cool. And then I flew to Sweden. And the reason I flew out to Sweden was for the Fimble Winter Jam, which was the 10th annual Fimble Winter Jam in Stockholm, Sweden. And then I went to Barcelona. Like I did a Barcelona sandwich essentially, like where I started and ended in Sweden, but then I was also in Barcelona at the In Extremis Jam. And that was really cool. It was like 2 weeks in total. I hadn't been to Stockholm in the winter, but it was really pretty, very dark, but also like really wholesome. And going to Barcelona was really cool. But yeah, it was a pretty short trip, and then I came back to the States and went to the West Coast and did a little road trip from Albuquerque to LA.
Oh,
So, that was
nice.
my December where I was not, like, in my apartment at all. Not once.
Yeah, that's a fun road. That's just like straight through the desert from Albuquerque to LA, right? You're pretty
Yeah,
much going through the Mojave the whole time. That's a
yeah.
cool stretch, though.
It was really sick. I'm so used to driving on the East Coast, and driving through the desert was honestly, like, really, really cool. I had my windows down, and it was, like, just beautiful scenery, as, like, anyone who does that drive knows. It's so
Yeah, the
cool.
loneliness is kind of nice. Like it's when you're on the interstate, especially, it's obviously there's cars all over the place, but if you hit it at the
Yeah,
right time,
yeah,
feeling those lonely stretches is super cool. You were
yeah,
coaching a workshop in Sweden, right? Or did you
yes.
end up coaching?
I did. It was a bit I mean, there was a question about it because I had a fever of, like, 103 degrees, um, like, 2 days
I apparently
before.
caught you at the best time to do this of
Yeah,
your trip.
my
Yeah.
fever was crazy. But I did end up coaching. I ended up, like, um, getting better pretty quickly, which is good. I just had, like, 1 terrible day, and I coached 1 workshop. Well, I guess no, 2 like, there were 2 groups, so I ended up doing, like, 2 different workshops, and then also warm up, which was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, what was the theme of your workshops?
I ended up, playing with, using gravity to, like, initiate movement and playing with, like, creativity uh, and like, we did some improvisation and just trusting your body to, like, make smart choices, like, we and I also used the spots that I chose in the gym to work with, w were, like besides the bars area, we went to the bars area, and that was, like, pretty predictable, but I ended up using kind of, like, weird odd spots and, like, just, like, 1 like, 2 corners, and there was this one spot that was, like, a flat surface, and then there was a bar sticking up, like, right here, so you could, like, use the bar to sort of, like, push and pull and, like, turn you on the flat surface and then exit,
Mhm.
and I was like it was a lot of fun, and
Can I ask
and
you
we
so
did some
I
bar
really
flow
like
stuff as well.
yeah, I was gonna say I really like how you phrased the theme, like using gravity to initiate movement. What do you mean by that? If you would sum it up for me without selling your workshop
Oh,
secrets to the public.
no, 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 I don't care, I well, like, when I like to move, and play with movement, I really like to find ways that feel the most, like, low energy and efficient, and a lot of times that's giving into, like, momentum and gravity, like, for example, and I do this in dance as well, like, throwing my arm or my leg and then seeing where gravity takes me and letting that, choose where I go next, instead of thinking about it too much ahead of time,
Mhm.
um, and also falling, like, I really like kind of having moments where, like, I kind of, like, trust fall into obstacles or, uh
I've noticed that. It's very
yeah.
dramatic. Well, I
Ve
think a good
It's
example
so
is like
fun, though. It's like
yeah.
learning to trust your obstacle and trust how you're gonna, like, move with it, is a lot of fun.
Well, I think like and I mean dramatic, I feel like that can be like sound negative or like pejorative, but I mean it in the
So
sense of like
dramatic.
it creates drama with the environment where it's like it theatrical maybe like in the same way that scale in parkour is dramatic because it's like creating this, spectacle of a thing. Like I really
Yeah,
enjoy in your movement, there are those moments of like push and pull. Like there's like tension and build up where
and then
it's like you are kind of going and then all of a sudden the obstacle's like catching you and turning your momentum into the next movement. And
yeah, I like
it
that
does
a
feel
lot.
like you're treating obstacles like a partner.
Yeah, I would agree, actually, and I like finding moments that also, like even finding some, like, still moments and some slower moments with that movement too, like, the momentum has a stopping point, and then it can rewind. or and then it can fall, or, it totally it's so abstract, like, it depends on what you're using, but, um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you feel like this is kind of, let me ask you one question first because this is really cool and it just happened and so it's relevant. Instagram, the Instagram account shared that really cool clip of you sliding down the circular staircase, which I think was one of my favorite clips of yours this year. Um,
Oh, thank you.
correct? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
they
what,
just did that, which was crazy. It was so cool.
yeah. Did you get to read? I read a couple of the comments because I'm always curious when something like that happens in parkour, especially when it's like not the stereotypical, like, oh, it's a store clip or like a big roof gap or something. I'm always like, what do people think
Yeah.
about this? Did you read any of the comments?
I did, but I definitely didn't get through all of them because the exposure on that video is crazy because it's Instagram.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I read some and, like, I didn't I didn't really see any, like, super negative ones, but also they're probably there. Um, but there was
No,
some
most of the
funny
ones I
ones.
read were pretty like, that looks really like what a beautiful artistic way to use that
Yeah,
space or something, which was like, oh wow, that's
thank
surprisingly
you.
positive.
Yeah, thank you. And or they were like, I don't know, there were some comments that were like they're inspired to use staircases this way,
Yeah.
or wanna try it out, and I'm like, "Go for it, that was really fun." Like, I had a great time.
It
And
did look.
actually, the idea of that started as a joke, as, like, most of my ideas start as. I was just like, "What if I" 'cause I slid down on my stomach first, and then I was just like, "What if I just slide down, like, on my back, but with my head facing out?" And then putting my foot on the column was, like, a stabilizing thing, and it just worked, like, really
Mhm.
well, and I was like, "Oh, I should film this. This is cool."
Yeah. No, it had this vibe of like, I this is gonna be a very weird reference, but
Okay.
my sister loved the Princess Diaries movie growing up, so I watched that movie way too many times as, like, a kid,
Oh, is that the one with, like,
and
Anne Hathaway?
with Anne Hathaway,
Yes.
and I remember they, like, have this whole sequence where she's learning how to, like, walk down the stairs elegantly, and there's just, like, something about
Oh,
the pacing and the tempo of it
yeah.
where I was just like, "This is so," it looks very elegant and refined, and I think that, like, often when I see your clips, I think refined is, like, an adjective, or elegant. They're adjectives that I don't generally use to describe parkour. I think, like, for
Mhm,
even people who really have beautiful movement and put movements together really aesthetically,
mhm.
it's just an aggressive looking sport, so I don't feel like elegant
Totally.
often
And
comes
also
up.
being outside too and, like, finding, like, a spot on the street or in, like, an alleyway a lot of times isn't the
Yeah.
most elegant spot, I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like your movement often does have this, like, aspect of elegance. And I think some of it is probably like your background, but also I wanted to tie this into what you were talking about with sort of the push and pull and finding those moments of pause. I
Mm.
remember we talked a little bit about this in our aborted attempt to do this conversation already.
Oh my god.
The idea of like cadence and pacing in
Yes.
lines, and from my perspective, it looks like the cadence is very intentional
Mm.
when you build lines. And I wanted to ask if it, yeah, like what goes into kind of the pacing or the cadence that you pick when you're building a line, and is it intentional?
It is me like, when I build lines, I do take the time to figure out what pacing makes the most sense for the movements that I'm picking, and also the flow of it, like but that isn't like, I don't automatically know that when I'm building a line or when I'm starting the process. It's definitely, like, part of the puzzle that I consider, 'cause sometimes like, there's been moments where I'm building a line and I'm going really fast through the whole thing, but like, by going fast, that is, like, it almost, like, comes at a cost, like, I'm sacrificing a move in there that it feels too hard or, like, it doesn't it just doesn't give me that, like, that feeling when I complete it, like, I feel like I would just, like, bullshitted my way through that, and, like, I don't wanna have that feeling when I do a line, like, I like feeling like, "Oh, that made sense." The, and I do like finding, like, I do like the feeling of doing slower lines that have, like, I guess, like, I can breathe, like, it has, like,
Hmm.
there's b there it I c there's b a breath somewhere, or there's, like, a suspension before going into something, that feels that feels easier for me to do than just going into that thing. Like, finding an opposition that then, like a rubber band effect, takes my movement into the next thing is actually easier and more satisfying than just doing the move without thinking about that. So, I'd say that it is intentional figuring out the pacing of a line.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it
Well, it
totally
seems
changes
also,
what it is.
yeah, from what you're saying to it and what you were saying earlier about the gravity kind of determining your direction and some of your line building, that probably is also, I guess, would you say it's also true that when you're in the process of like building that line, you can feel, you've like, not only does gravity tell you where to go, but it's kind
Mhm.
of like, oh, this rebound is happening more quickly than I'd anticipated. Or like, actually, the energy, it's pushing me this way, but it's not really pushing me this way that powerfully. Like, do you
Yeah.
feel like that kind of gravity concept carries through in the pacing as well?
Oh, for sure, and I can play with that too, like, what I don't know. I I I can play with that being, like, if I just totally let go and, like, go kind of limp for a bit, what's the speed of that in this moment? But also, if, like, vice versa, if I'm, like I guess it is intentional, like, I like playing with it, like, if I'm a bit stiff, like, more stiff, or trying to hit, like, a certain shape or something, then that also changes the energy going
Hmm.
into the next thing. And I don't like to get too in my head about it, like, I don't I don't know, but it is definitely, like, part of the process to play with those
Yeah.
elements, you know?
Well, this is like you're obviously you have a background in dance, so I want to ask you about that. So I'm sure a lot of this sort of like rhythm related things is also so internalized that like trying to use words to break down feelings sometimes can
Yeah,
be a little bit tough. But would you mind telling me a little bit about your background in dance, and maybe we can kind of dig into how it impacted your progression into parkour?
for sure. So yeah, I started as a dancer, but specifically a ballet dancer. Um, like, the schools that I grew up in were I think they did some other classes, but I didn't really dive into those classes. I was like a strict bunhead. I did classical ballet, um, like Russian style for people who know the different types of ballet. I was like, yeah, I did some Cicchetti training too. But and then it was never my plan to, like, go to college. I wanted to be a ballet dancer. And then I ended up, like, moving out of the house when I, like, just turned 17 and got into, like, the lowest ranks of a ballet company in Florida, and I did that for, like was it, like, a 6 months or almost 6 months? It was, like, half a year, and then I ended up leaving that company and leaving ballet, and then discovered parkour, like, after a year gap, of not doing movement, besides, like, going rock climbing sometimes or dancing in the
Yeah.
studio by myself or something like that. And then after discovering parkour, I, like, got back into dance, but just for me, not to, like, be professional or anything, that wasn't my goal.
And look what happened. You're doing shows
And
again.
now I'm doing shows, which is crazy, that was not
Dragged
part of
right
the
back
plan,
in.
but yeah. And then
Um,
when I started training parkour, it actually, like, inspired me to get back into my dance training and to, like, do, to do more, like, improvisation because I love movement, which is really sweet actually, like, parkour, like, really, like, healed my relationship with dance and, like, movement as a whole because it was so, like, broken and weird after the ballet whole thing.
I've heard that from a lot of people. I think there's something about being able to fall into a sport that's kind of adjacent that has so much freedom where you
Yeah.
can like take that pressure off yourself and rebuild your relationship with movement in isolation. And I know a lot of people that started in gymnastics or dance or, some other kind of movement discipline or yoga, and then they had this kind of unhealthy, hyper structured, competitive or professional approach. And then they
Yeah.
were able to take that space and come back to it. And also in many of those situations, they're like, oh, accidentally, I ended up finding even more success when I went back to music or dance or whatever it
Yeah.
was.
It's crazy how, like, if you're healthy, you do better. Like, or if you have a healthy mindset, it actually makes your career better.
Yeah.
Insane how
That's like
that's not prioritized in young people's training. Um, but yeah, no, that was definitely the
100%.
case for me, for sure.
And you found out about parkour in Vermont, right? Because I started to hear
Yes.
this story, and this is where one of the internet connection issues happened.
Ugh,
So could you relive your first parkour experience for me?
for sure. I was, in Vermont, and I was in college at the University of Vermont, and then I went to open gym, like, in a gymnastics open gym, because like, the UVM had a gymnastics team, and they went sometimes, and then I just saw, like, the Burlington, Vermont parkour community training, and I believe they were doing, like, vaults on the spring floor, um, and I was just kind of like I didn't have any goal being there, I was just, like, hanging out, and then I ended up getting introduced to the community there. I don't even think I don't remember being, like, super direct, like, introducing myself, but I was just in the area and, like, I entered a conversation or something, and this was, like, in March of 2023, I believe, and then they added me to their group chat, and they were like, "We're gonna start training outside once it gets warm in Vermont," which is, like, usually around April, and you're welcome to join us if you want. Because I also think in the conversation, we were talking about how, like, I liked climbing buildings, 'cause I still like, urban exploration, but I did that before I knew what parkour was. Like, I just and I never really thought of it as parkour, like, I'm not really that afraid of heights, and I like exploring.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they were like, "Oh, we train outside and, like, we go on rooftops," and I was like, "That sounds fun." So they added me to their group chat, and then I remember, like, about a month later, in April, they invited me to train with them, and then I did, like, a couple sessions with them, learned sort of what parkour was, and then they invited me to Hubbable in Boston, which was in May. It's like a month later after that, and that was like my first parkour thing that I went to. That was the first time I met the community, that I knew it was a community, um, and it was super fun. And like we went to Burroughs, and I remember that was like a big highlight for me, was going to Burroughs. It was really fun.
That's awesome. Hubbable is a great intro. I mean, the Boston
Yes.
community in general is a great way to get into it. Did you end up going to
For
join or
sure.
die later that year too?
I did, yeah, that
Nice.
next October was my first join or die.
Nice. What
Yeah,
I'm curious because
that
you
was
said
so
that was
fun.
20, so it's 2023,
Yes, that was,
and
like, spring of 2023.
what was your perspective on parkour before you got into it? Like when you just if you can, I mean, I don't know if you
I
can
didn't
think
know what
back
it
to
was.
that.
I never even watched The Office, like, I
Oh,
literally the
thank
word
God. Okay.
parkour was, like, foreign. I didn't know what it was.
You were a blank slate. That's the best case
Complete
scenario.
complete blank slate. I also wasn't even connected to, like, parkour media on social media. My explore page and everything, my feed was, like, so different than that, like, I don't remember what it was at the time, but there was no parkour in there, um, and then I actually started, like, meeting people within the community mostly by meeting them in person, and then discovering their social media pages after that, um,
That's really cool. That's
yeah,
awesome because I feel like that was my experience, but that was 20 years ago. And so I'm always, for people
right.
who started more recently, I'm like, there's so much baggage in America that when you're in the
Mhm.
community, you kind of see The Office or,
Well,
whatever other
yeah,
connotation people have, Ninja Warrior. And I'm like, what was your perspective on it? Well, in those
right.
first few sessions, what carried over from dance? Like, do you feel like you picked stuff up pretty quickly, or do you feel like there were a lot of similarities in the beginning?
Yeah, I definitely felt like I always had good, like, body awareness from my ballet training, so, um and then also, I mean, like, I have a bit of early gymnastics training, so, like, I went into parkour knowing how to do a back handspring, a front handspring, and, like, roughly the idea of how to do a swing gainer, like a flyaway.
Yeah.
Um, and, like, that was pretty much it. And also I was comfortable on my hands. But I, like even when in the first few sessions that I had, like, with people, I was pretty sendy as well, like, I just wanted to copy everybody, everything that people did, and and be creative, and, like, I really enjoyed learning the names of different moves too and, like, memorizing it, like, I it was also exciting because I'd already, like, memorized all ballet terminology and so much choreography there that, like, a whole new, like, vocabulary of movement was just, like, really cool to me, and it still is. It
Yeah.
still is. It's still, like, my mission to learn as much as I can.
I was gonna say, wait until you learn that every name has a different name in each language too.
Oh, yeah. No, totally, and, like,
Every
depending on where
dialect.
you are too, they call
Yeah.
it something else. Yeah, it was my first training days were really fun though, and remember I didn't do a ton of, I never did solo sessions, um, training the first, like, year of doing parkour.
Hmm.
I started doing that a bit later, and then once I started it, like, I didn't stop. Once I opened that door, that's, like, how I mostly train now is, like, solo sessions.
Yeah. That's really cool. Do you feel like when you go out for a solo session, there's a similarity to when you would just like go into the studio and have some time to yourself? Like, does it feel like you kind of go in with that same, I don't want to say like choreography mindset, but improvisation mindset?
Yeah, it does feel it does feel pretty similar,
This is all just so I can feel justified to someday do some kind of dance, by the way. I don't. I'm like, I want to do it in reverse. I'm like,
yeah, like, go into the studio and then
and be like,
start
yeah, I
experimenting
know
with,
how to
like,
do
floor work
parkour.
and things. Like, I do there is a similar feeling, like, when I go into the studio and improvise, it's I think I said this on the last podcast, which is, like, I remember there was something I said, like yeah, no, what like, studio when I improvise on the studio, that's, like, two-dimensional, like, it's just me and the floor, and then when I improvise outside, like, solo training, that's, like, taking what I know from, like, two-dimensional improvisation, and it feels like it's like it's the
Yeah.
3D version of that, and also, there isn't necessarily, like there's no con to this, it's also not a pro, but it is notable that there isn't a mirror, like,
Hmm.
there, yeah.
Yeah, that's a question that I think we kind of started digging into and that we didn't get to finish addressing, which I'm excited about. In my From my perspective, not having any dance background whatsoever, thankfully for anybody who's ever seen me dance, uh, the idea
I wanna
that
get
I
you in the
have in my
studio.
head, well, I'll do one of your workshops. I think what you had
Yeah.
said
Oh,
last
wait, I
time,
actually forgot to mention that I did an Aller Up workshop that was, like, in the dance studio with parkour athletes.
I think yeah, I think you told me that last time, and I feel like you
Oh,
said something along the lines of like the way that you looked at it was like the way contemporary dance uses the floor. It's like the floor is the obstacle in a
yeah.
certain sense, which I
No,
thought
totally.
was a really cool way to look at it. I'd never thought of like, oh, the floor is an obstacle, obviously, but yeah.
Yeah, it is, and then, like, learning to work with it depending on the how slippery it is or if you're wearing socks or if you're barefoot, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like
Anyways,
you
I
and Matt
interrupted you.
McCreary. No, you. I mean, that's why you're here.
Okay.
But I was gonna say the interesting thing that you bring up about the mirror is that like I'm curious if you feel like there's a difference where dance, from my perspective, seems to be always kind of like outward or presentation focused. Like it's kind of like it's always presupposed that somebody's viewing it in a certain sense.
Like,
And
yeah.
parkour, for me at least, isn't. And I was wondering if you would agree about that in the dance perspective, and then also in parkour when you practice it. Do you feel like you have that same sense of like it's going to be viewed at some point? Or does it feel more purely like this is just a thing that happens in isolation?
My head went in so many directions throughout that.
We
Like,
can chase down all those rabbit holes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, yeah. So,
But I guess first, do you think that dance does sort of have this element where it's like you're composing something for a viewer?
I think it can.
Okay.
I don't think it always does. Like, I think that there's a huge element in ballet that where ballet is like a visually aesthetic thing,
Mm-hmm.
and, like, people, work really hard to have clean lines and clean technique because there's that visual focus. Like, the visual side of it is, like, so important. Um, but I will say, like, as I've gotten older and have studied ballet for longer, the internal feeling is still really important, to me, and it's not just external. Like, when I
Mm-hmm.
first was training ballet, I it was weird how, like, for years, I actually felt like I was almost always viewing myself from a third person perspective and not actually feeling that internal feeling for what I was doing, like, literally all the time. Like, with every single thing that I did, I was thinking about how it looked, and not how it felt. Or and that but that has changed. Like, I don't just like, when I dance ballet, I don't actually I know good clean technique, but I don't necessarily just think about what my line looks like, or and I really don't try to, like, be super picky, and that's for me because I'm not trying to be professional, but as
Mm-hmm.
far as but then, like, like, no, wait, my brain is going crazy. Wait, I don't think that parkour like, I don't really go into training with an expectation that I'm gonna show people what I do, um, and I don't always film like, when I go training, and I don't always
Yeah.
film when I go to jams, and when I film when it's something that I want to share, but that isn't always, and sometimes I don't wanna share anything, and it's not necessarily because 'cause I'm not proud of it, but it's because it's like, I don't know, I don't need to or something,
Uh,
like,
no, I
yeah.
think that's exactly what I wanted to kind of get into because I think in my brain this idea of like seeing yourself in the third person versus like inhabiting your body
Mhm.
fully and like being in the experience. I think I see that. I mean, first off, too, like dance is an art. And
Yeah.
so anytime you're creating art, I think it always, to a certain, like for the art to be meaningful in a certain sense, like it presupposes somebody else consuming or viewing it or participating with it. Like that is like part of the artistic experience is that it's not this like flame in the void that disappears, right? And I
Totally,
think parkour
totally.
has that element. But I think what you just said that fascinates me is like a lot of people in parkour because of social media and the sudden like rise that I have seen going from when I started in 2007 and maybe you'd put out one YouTube video a year to if
Mhm.
you want to be relevant in quotes in the parkour community, like
Yeah.
feeling this obligation to, film every session and always get a line to share. I think that,
Right.
yeah, a lot of people feel probably this pressure to observe externally and like make sure that everything can be packaged for the Instagram Reels viewer to see. And because
Yeah.
your content is so aesthetic and it looks like it's very consumable. I mean that like as a compliment, like it is the way it's presented, like the way you interact with the environment, it doesn't look the way that my training looks. And I think it would be easy for somebody to see that and be like, oh, Chloe probably just goes out, like choreographs this stuff, puts it on Instagram. And I was curious to hear, yeah, if that was how you approached it. And it's cool to hear that even though it looks a little bit different, it feels like the process internally is exactly the same, which is like
Right.
sometimes I find the thing that I created interesting and I want to share it with my friends.
And
Sometimes
then
I just want to do it.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
totally. Sometimes I just wanna do it. And, like, sometimes and it also depends on, like, the spot that I choose too, like, like, a lot of times I do put a lot of, like, intention behind the framing of, when I choose to film it, I don't I often don't like, I guess it depends on how much I like the spot. Like, if I really like the spot, I will put time and attention into, like, how it's framed
Hmm.
and also, like, what angle the camera's at. 'Cause I like I like, finding spots almost as if, like, I'm looking at it in a frame already, like, I'm like, "This frame right here, if I crop it like this, looks pretty cool," or, "I like these colors," you know? And so in that sense, like, I do put a lot of, um, intention into, into my filming, but it isn't like I'm just like, "I'm gonna go out and get a visually aesthetic clip right now," and I'm like, I don't know. A lot of times I really do just, like, train on random things, and
You
I
don't
don't
have an alarm that says film it for the gram at noon that goes off every day?
Oh, yeah, every Wednesday at 2 p.m. posting no, I don't. I mean, I do, this year, I was this past year, I was really consistent with posting, but I think that's honestly because, like, I don't care so much. Like, the things I post are things I do right then and there, and I don't really think about it too much, um, and it's easy to be consistent if you kind of film a lot of stuff and also if it's like your camera roll keeps growing, and if your social media is like your camera roll, then, like, it'll just keep going. I I think
Yeah.
that's honestly why I've been so consistent.
What a
Yeah.
pleasantly healthy perspective on social media. People take note.
Oh.
No, that's I feel like I no, I totally resonate with that. What do you look for? Because you were saying that, the aesthetic of a spot, like what
Mhm.
do you find interesting about a spot with where your training is at right now? Is there anything that in particular like really grabs your attention?
Right now right now, I'm super colors focused, I think, which is really odd, but
That's
I'm
cool.
yeah, I don't know, and I
You just
also
got rid of 20% of the male population that are colorblind is just tuned out of this podcast.
yeah, they're like, "Well, I can't yeah, sorry." Um, and yeah, I don't know, like, recently when I saw but also, I like finding kind of, like, weird things like a spot that sort of makes me think a little bit, um, such as an out of place object or, like, a bunch of things close together or, like, a tree that's, like, really close to a wall and a ledge, and it's not like, I like to find things that are, like, kinda packed together or, like, odd shapes. I also really like bars of any kind, like, I will find a bar spot wherever I can.
I've gotten
And
that vibe.
yeah, big fan of bars, big fan of things that don't necessarily like, they're not made for movement. Um, I like training at, like, parkour parks as well, but, I mean, there's a but there. I honestly find more fun. I have a really good time training on spots that aren't, like, made for movement at all,
Yeah.
um, in that sense, yeah. Those are
What do
I don't
you
know. I like lighting as well. If the lighting's cool, I will probably wanna do something there. Yeah.
No, I think the colors and lighting are two things that I don't think about as much in my training because it's so like challenge specific.
It's so visual
And
too. Yeah. It's like
yeah, like and so much of my training is like, oh, I want to do this thing in this space. And I
right.
really think it's also very freeing to kind of it seems more like your perspective is like you see a space and you're like, what an interesting space. What can I do here? Does that feel accurate?
Yes. That kinda nails it, I think, right there. Like, this space is cool and I'm intrigued by it in some way. What can I do with it? Or how can I dance with it? rather than, like, apply something on it that may or may not work. Yeah, I really like that process because it also is, like, it kind of feels more, like, limitless to me. Like, even stripping away like, you can add moves in there, but strip away all terminology that you know, like, literally every single thing and just focus on, like, seeing the spot for what it is and seeing the thing about it that makes it unique in comparison to all the other spots and try to work with it and let that decide what the movement is, if that makes
Do you
sense.
f-
Yeah.
yeah.
But there's
Do you
also that's also
feel
sometimes I do wanna just do a move at a place. Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say, do you feel like there's a certain amount of like internal listening that you have to do to get to that place where you can have that kind of conversation with a spot?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of, like, just playing around and progressions that can go into that, and also, like, making choices and sticking with it. If you just keep I found that in my training, if I just keep playing around forever, that's fun, but it won't necessarily get me somewhere efficiently, like and I don't and sometimes it's nice to have, like, a line that comes really quickly, and then
Yeah.
you're done, and then you film it, and then you're like, "Thank you, spot. Bye." Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
But to
I
do that, you
really
have to, like,
like
make choices, that's what I'm saying.
no, that I think that's yeah, that's really helpful because I think what you just said earlier about forgetting the language of parkour and opening up yourself to the possibility of this like boundless sense of movement, like that requires being able to forget and think about what skills you have just
Mhm.
in this like really abstract sense, like requires a certain amount of insightfulness or like internal attention that I think a lot
Yeah.
of people don't have. I think that's kind of a skill maybe that you
Develop.
developed. Yeah.
Mhm.
I just wanted to point that out because I do think that if you're listening, I find that some of my best sessions, even though I think our styles are pretty different,
Mhm.
I go into a spot the exact same way that you described, and it's looking at a wall and a pole and a light fixture sticking out 8 feet off the ground or something, and
Yeah.
it's completely like forget about, you know, stride to tack to 180 to it's just feel where the momentum is taking you. Look
Yes.
at what's interesting about these features, what's unique about
Um,
these features, but like that takes time in a kind of a Bruce Lee sense to like you have to learn the skills and then you forget all the skills.
right, which is kinda yeah, and also it takes, like you have to be, I guess, like, willing to maybe look stupid or something, or even feel silly, and
Hmm.
not, um and also you don't know if it's even gonna be something that you think is really good. Yeah, but it might be, and that's what's fun about it, is that it's like a lottery ticket, like, you might actually find, like, a move that you really like, and then you can apply it somewhere else,
Yeah.
yeah. No, those are definitely I think my favorite sessions as
Do you
well.
have any challenges or like I guess lines or movements or spaces that you've recorded that you're really happy with that you feel like visually articulate exactly what you were talking about?
I'm gonna open up my Instagram page. Let's Yeah, well, okay, there's a few that really stand out to me, like, let's see, I think the first one that I did that was, like, I loved this process. I really wanna, like, why and then because after I trained this one solo session, I actually, I journaled that night and was like, "That was one of the best solo sessions I ever had." And I was like, "What?" And then after that, I wanted to apply things I learned from that session to my other solo sessions and, like, the thing but the it was, like, this spot. Let me pull her up. This, like, tree and wall spot was,
Hmm.
like, one of the nicest processes that I've ever had. in a solo session, and it felt so satisfying to do, and, and that, that wall move that I did was, the first time that I've ever done that, and then, I figured out how to do it on a railing, and, I've done that in so many lines since, but it just came it flowed so nicely. I was in a
Hmm.
really nice headspace, and I also think that that's something that people don't talk about that much is how, your headspace plays such a big role in, the quality of training sessions that you have, mental health and also, yeah, just where your mind's at, it's not just about, how physically strong you are or how many
Yeah,
years you spend training, my headspace was great that day, and I had a really good solo session, so that one stands out. This tree one also, I think, was really fun to do because that was, there's no
that
moves
one's
in there
cool.
that I knew how to do there that I came into knowing, just
Yeah.
figured it out on the tree. Um, yeah, those are some
For the
special ones.
listener too, that second tree one, I think I don't know if it's like pinned on your page or something. I feel like I've seen that one pretty recently, but I love that that's specifically an example where the gravity concept you're talking about earlier is so obvious because watching that, it's just like
True.
this pendulum of momentum, and there's like this moment of pause as the momentum kind of like dies at the apex of the arc, and then you swing back in the other direction, and it's very like
Yeah.
satisfying.
And it was really satisfying to, figure out as well. Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking about sort of like the headspace. Is there anything that you do or that you feel like you have found to be helpful for you that gets you into a good spot to approach training from that kind of like blank canvas, open-minded headspace?
I think it's a bit I mean, it's a constant practice of just, trying to actively trying to be mindful and present with myself and honest with, how I'm doing um, and taking care of myself too. I prioritized my, health above, everything else, um, and I also just being kind to myself, I don't really follow a fitness routine or any type of, diet or anything like that, but I do stretch in some way every single day, and I think that that plays a role in my mindset for training because it's I value and I care about my body, and it feels like such a gift to be able to move and to be able to have fun and to feel strong and capable. Um, and just being grateful and acknowledging that sort of drives my my training and my sessions because it's ultimately, such a gift to be able to move and have fun is such a
Mhm.
blessing, and I think that yeah, that's, but that's, upkeep, journaling and stretching and going to the gym when I can or and taking time to solo train are all and eating well, things that I like, but also not being too crazy about it because I also it's just it fuels the quality of my sessions for sure, and it's a
Yeah,
constant, practice, I guess. It's just like living life, yeah. It's just like brushing your teeth, you know? Yeah.
which hopefully people do daily. Otherwise, they'll be like, "Oh, I do that once a week. Who knows?"
Yeah.
No, it's really refreshing. I think the gratitude angle,
Mhm.
it's very refreshing to hear that. I think it's kind of rare. Maybe not rare, but I think a lot of times in parkour and any sport or practice that people are passionate about, when you get to a certain level, you set these expectations for yourself.
Yeah.
And like you said earlier, when you're having these dialogues, an important thing is to be open to looking bad, to failing,
Yeah.
to experimenting, and like knowing that it might not work out. It might look dumb
Yeah.
and it doesn't end up going anywhere. And being grateful for the ability to do that
Yeah.
is so fundamental. And especially when, I get to talk with so many athletes who are in positions where they're training all the time, and many of the people who are listening are probably not always in that boat, and
Yeah.
they maybe it's interesting that the perspective that you have when you have to take a step back from being able to move all the time because you have a kid or a family or a
Or an injury.
relationship or a job or an injury, like these things
Yeah.
come up for everybody.
Yeah.
And I do think that hearing you articulate the importance of like just that daily gratitude to be like, this is a thing that even when it goes wrong does bring me joy is really refreshing.
Yeah. And often, like, when you are forced to take that step back, that's when when you come back to it, that's when you're, like, the most grateful. But then it can fizzle out too as it becomes like, the longer
Yeah.
you're just, like, able-bodied, or if
Yeah.
you
You
are,
start to take
like
it for granted.
totally, and, yeah, yeah, I don't really have that. Cause also, I didn't really dive into this beforehand, but, like, when I left the ballet world, I was, like, extremely weak physically and in the lowest mental place that I had ever been. Like, I had, like, really bad mental problems that affected my physical health, when I was training ballet, and then the reason I, like, didn't do movement was because I was, like, focusing on recovery and, like, actually being strong and, like, mentally and physically, and, like, the gratitude that I have for my body, like, getting over that and coming back into movement is, like, huge. So, like, I will never, ever take it for granted, like, absolutely not, and it's like making up for lost time to be able to move and to be able to dance and to feel strong. Yeah.
Well, I'll speak for everybody in parkour when I say we're very grateful that you were in a space where you're able to bring yourself out of that because, yeah, what you're bringing to parkour is very fun and very cool. And I think,
Thanks.
especially just hearing you talk about it here, right? It's a really positive way for people to just take a different perspective, a little bit of a different perspective.
Mhm.
I do want to ask you one more thing, because I
Okay.
know that we talked about this last time. Um, Not even in terms of like a specific move or anything like that, but do you have goals for your movement in 2026?
Yeah, I have some goals at the moment. Like, I have some short-term ones and some longer-term ones. I really want to, I guess, like, okay, the overarching goal is do more, create more, and grow. Like, that's just overarching. That's not specific, whatever. I just wanna go out and do more and create more. But specifically, I want to create longer form solos in 2026. I did one in 2025. It was my cage solo with the Diavolo company in Los Angeles, and that was my first, like, longer form piece of movement, and I think it would be fun to create more of those somehow, or to maybe sort of dive into, like, group movement like that. Um, I'd like doing that, but specifically, like, with parkour. But also, I want to do, um like, there's some moves that I really wanna get outside in
Mm-hmm.
2026. Hopefully, I can get a souk outside consistently. Hopefully. And also, like, that variation I did into a handstand cast, like that bridge, bendy, twisty, I don't even know what
Yeah.
it's called, thing into, like, handstand cast. If I can do that outside, that'd be cool. Um, Doing a giant with a it doesn't even need to be, like, just a flyaway after that would be cool outside. And I wanna just get some more things, like, just more consistent skill-wise, um, like trapdoors. I've done them, but, not very many, and, what else? Let's see, and also, oh my gosh, I broke my collarbone on a Webster. I wanna, like, revenge the Webster. I've
Yeah.
been avoiding them, but I feel like that's silly, and I wanna get better at those.
Well, I
Uh,
love that you have like a non-standard movement repertoire because I think it's really cool to see the lines that you build. I mean, like you said, that your gymnastics experience coming in was like front handspring, back handspring,
Yeah,
and the way that you've been able to take, in some ways, almost like the limitations, again, I'm using quotes for the listener,
yeah.
of not having scoot dub full in your
Oh,
back
I can't
pocket.
twist to
And I
save
think
my life.
that's, but I think like what's really amazing is that you've shown a lot of people who would see that as like, oh, I need to, get all of these movements first. Then maybe I can start to look at like creativity and how to approach a space. You know, the back handspring and front handspring variations you've done on staircases and railings and wall interactions are
Oh, the,
like,
like and I did one on a tiny little, like, pole
yeah.
sticking out of the wall once. That
And
was
it's like an entire, or like up and down staircases. Like that's a whole, you're like, okay, I'm gonna take this section of things that I'm really comfortable with, but
mhm.
use them in such a unique way that like no one else really in the community has done. And I think that's very inspiring for people who maybe don't have a huge trick set, or don't
Yeah,
look at themselves as having like an expansive movement vocabulary.
yeah.
And
I
it's a good
totally
indication. It's
don't.
like, hey, that
Like, I'm a
doesn't
beginner.
actually that doesn't matter. It's like
No,
you can still add
I
so much value.
totally. Like, work with what you have, and also expand on what you have, and, like, I love learning new things too, but, like, I am definitely a beginner with a lot of, like, parkour moves, like, just doing, like, jumps are like, I'm not good at them, and I and
We'll get you to
honestly, like, my
Colorado for like a
mental game is,
week.
like, not that good with those, and like, I've trained all the vaults, but I'm not comfortable doing, like, a lot of vaults in places, yeah, so but, yeah, I really think that there's value in taking what you know how what you feel comfortable doing with your body and your training that you have, and then, like, running with it and applying it to different places and pushing yourself there. You don't need to have every single thing down before you, like, go crazy, like, go crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I love that. I totally lied because I have one more thing that I just thought of that I'm really
okay,
curious about.
for
So,
sure.
thinking of all those wall interactions, who inspired you to, like, was that like an organic process of how you started using those spaces, or did you see? I mean, I think about athletes like Nene or Egg, and I see some similarities in like
Mhm.
how you use spots, but I'm curious, like, who motivated you when you were starting to develop some of that line building?
Um, I will say I never really had, like, like, one specific, like, athlete that really motivated me, but I do think that there's, like, a combo of different video parts that I saw or, like, at screenings, like, always after screenings, I was, like, super inspired, and aspects of different people's movement that really, like, stuck with me that definitely influenced and still influences my training. Egg is a really great example. Egg was one of the first, like, athletes that I trained with, like, at Hubbable in 2023 that really, like, opened my eyes um, to different, like, ways of moving your body and training and having fun. Um, and then also I'm super inspired by, Ryuya, um,
Mm-hmm.
and, like, Shirai as well. There's, like and then athletes that I trained with while traveling, like, I'm really inspired by, and any of and every t and, like, with spot choices and people like break dancers who then do parkour, and I see how they take their break dancing into their parkour lines, I think is super cool. Yeah, I there's yeah, there's so many athletes out there who have, like, motivated me and have inspired me since I, like, joined the parkour community, and I'm so grateful to have, like, spent quality time training with them and being able to see their process and have it sort of, I don't know, but whether it's intentional or not, influence the way that I train.
Perfect. And always the last thing I like to end on is if you have one thing, one piece of media to recommend to the audience, what would it be?
Oh, I'll use the one that I said last time. Although I did recently read a new book, so maybe I should say that one.
Drop
Um,
both of them.
okay, so the first one is a creative act, a way of being, or the creative act, a way of being by Rick Rubin. It's the book that has like the circle and the dot in it. That's gray. Um, I love that book. Um,
Also recommended by Lilu on this podcast, I'll say for the listener. So
which is
double recommendation.
yeah. I remember yeah, that's so crazy that she recommended the same thing. And I know like a lot of people that I really respect have like told me that they've read that book as well. I read it like I don't know, like 2 years ago. I don't know. I read it a little while ago, but I still think about that. Like there's this one thing that they say that's like an artist lives their life with a fishing line that's constantly being like what is that word?
Like
Thrown?
reeling it in.
Yeah,
Oh,
just
yeah,
constantly
casting it.
out there. You're constantly casting your fishing line. Like and then into the world for inspiration to come in. Like it's not like you turn it on. It's
Hmm.
like that idea of just living your life like always in awe and with the opportunity to be inspired by your surroundings or whatever. It's something that stuck because I was like I relate to that a lot. Um and that's how like people get inspired by spots when they're not necessarily searching for a spot. Like they see it while walking and that's their fishing line being cast and something bit,
Yeah.
Yeah, so that stuck. Um yeah.
And then did you have you said you had a recent recommendation
I
as well?
do, but I don't remember the name of it and I'm gonna grab it in my room. Hang on. Cause I just like traveled with it.
That's a good that's a sign of a good book or piece of media.
Yeah, it's
Is
it's
when you're like,
actually
I'm bringing this with me.
it's such a good book. I forget the name of it, and I also just emptied. I'm not gonna show my floor right now. Okay, I forget the name of it, so this is not gonna be helpful
We'll
at
add it
all.
in post.
Yeah, I can send it to you, like the name of it, but basically it's this book um that's an interview with a bunch of graphic designers about their about like their process for creating and running workshops and their experience with running workshops and collaborating and they really like get into the like strategies for teaching and also what they value with collaborations and stuff and although it's about graphic designing everything they say can be applied to movement and
Hmm.
since I just started like running workshops and like thinking more about how to like teach in that sense because I've only done ballet teaching before recent like this past year. I really wanted some advice and like this book is like a short read. Um Relatively it's like that thick, but
Yeah.
it's pretty small. And they word
Advice
things
on
really
sharing the
well.
creative process. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
it's
that makes
super
a lot of
cool.
sense.
And it's really focused on like workshops and collaborating and setting the right amount of guidelines and rules that still gives people like freedom and creativity. It's cool.
Perfect. Well, I'll drop that in the description and the outro so that
I'll
people
find
know what
it
it
and
is.
then yeah, I'll so it's not
We'll
just
put your voice memo in there, like right in the middle. You can just record it. It's called
okay.
blank.
Yeah, I'll
Good.
send that. I feel terrible that I don't remember the name. I think it's like set rules, unexpected outcomes. I think.
I really hope it's just completely different from that. That would be the best option. But that
Okay.
sounds fascinating. No,
Yeah,
those are
it
both
is a
great
fascinating book.
recommendations.
Great read. I just finished it. It's great.
Well, Chloe Reynolds, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the takeoff. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I love that you're doing this, by the way. Like, it's so cool to have conversations with people in the community and pick their brains. I think it's super entertaining and super cool.
Genuinely my pleasure. And so this was a great time. That was such a wholesome episode. Honestly, I was really happy to get this one done because I'd had a blast talking to Chloe the first time when we could hear each other through a poor internet connection. And it was really good to get to revisit some of those topics and actually have the space and time to dig into them. I just enjoy her perspective on a lot of those concepts, from the sort of gravity influencing your movement to seeing a space and letting movement really be determined by the space as opposed to trying to match your movements preconceived into a space. I think both options obviously, have their time and place, but it's really refreshing to just hear somebody who's like, no, I genuinely look at an environment as a canvas and try to forget, in true Bruce Lee fashion, all of the movements and techniques, and just allow my body to interact with the space in a really abstract, kind of genuine way. And for me, at least, that was a reminder to allow myself to do that a little bit more in my training. I'm very excited to share next week's conversation with you. I've got a couple really good ones coming up. As always, I hope you enjoyed this one as much as I did. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.